The following was originally broadcast on Northumberland 89.7 FM. For more podcasts and learn more about us, go to northumberland897.ca. And thank you for downloading this podcast.
Welcome to our program, Aging, a New Reality, a show that provides insight into many of the concerns that seniors have during their journey in later years. We talk to experts who will share their knowledge on subjects such as finances, nutrition, housing, and health.
Today, we're back with Dr. Annabella Bonata from the University of Waterloo and the Intact Center, where climate change is our topic of interest and concern. And last time we spoke, Annabella, we talked about the Intact Center, and we also talked about what climate change is all about and how it's happening, and how we really have to learn about measures we can take to support ourselves when unusual events occur, such as storms, such as floods, such as fire, etc. And I was wondering today if we could talk a little bit about water. Water is such an important part of life. Our bodies are mostly water. We think of water and we think about drinking it, using it for cooking, using it for bathing, using it for washing, swimming, boating, fishing, you name it. What about, we rarely think about when water becomes a problem. What kind of problems can water actually cause?
Yeah, so you're right in what you're saying. We enjoy water so much so that we build some of our communities and homes on water, like close to water, on the water. So increasingly, we're seeing a bit more flooding in our areas in southern Ontario and like in southern Quebec, as you've probably heard over the spring. There was quite a bit of flooding, and there are different reasons for this. So as the climate warms, we are starting to see more extreme rain events. So we'll have rain fall, much more of it fall on ground that might already be saturated, so it has nowhere to go. So it starts to flood. Or there are rivers nearby that don't really have a place to spread out because we've built around them. So naturally, a river might have had marsh around it, or something that can like a wetland that can soak up some of that water, but we've built over these wetlands over time, and so now the water has nowhere to go, and a flooding ends up occurring. So in these situations, what we're most at risk of is basement flooding, and basement flooding is actually the costliest type of environmental hazard or natural hazard that we're seeing in Canada, or caused by an environmental hazard. So it actually costs the average homeowner $43,000 to repair their basement. So it's the costliest type of impact that we're seeing from flooding. And many people are just not prepared for it because, again, you think it might not happen in your area. Floods haven't occurred in your area, but it can happen. And we are increasingly so building on floodplains. So areas that would have flooded in the past, that's where we're building our homes. So it's important to keep that in mind and be prepared that it could occur in your area.
Wow, $43,000 really struck me as a lot of money. How can we mitigate this problem of flooding? And I was also interested in looking again at that saturation problem, where you say when heavy rains come, it saturates the soil to such a degree that it cannot absorb any more water. And I would assume that the closer houses are together with their paved driveways and their paved roadways and their paved sidewalks, that none of those things absorb any water. So the little bit of grass that we're left with on our front lawns or back lawns have to absorb a great deal of water. And perhaps they can't. Maybe they're not big enough.
Yes, exactly. So with what you mentioned, even think about when flooding mostly occurs is in the spring, because our ground is already saturated with all the snow that has been melting. So we'll have a big snow melt, rain comes down, nowhere for water to go. And as you mentioned, our surfaces are impermeable now, so water cannot get through. So if you have the opportunity and have some space for a garden, you can build a rain garden. And there are some subsidies that municipalities provide or conservation authorities provide for people to install a rain garden. And that can help quite a bit with absorbing some of this rain. If that's not available to you, there are other options inside of your home that you can do to prepare for a possible flood. Some of these are, again, things that you can just do maintenance twice a year around your home. So remove any debris from storm drains around your home, clean out your eaves troughs, and check for leaks in your plumbing every once in a while. Make sure you have a sump pump if you can, and a backwater valve that is cleaned out. Some people have these, but they don't do maintenance around them. Make sure you take a look at them before the floods occur. So we experience flooding in the spring and in the fall. So do your maintenance around that time. Do it before then. You can complete some simple upgrades around your home. So you can extend your downspout. It should be about 2 meters away from your foundation. Sometimes the other day I was at a friend's house and I was looking at her neighbor's house and the downspout was just going straight into the side of the basement, like foundation. But that's how they're all made. So it sounds simple, but people aren't doing it because they haven't had the issue happen yet. You can also install window well covers, for example, and this will help if rain falls and it won't fall in there. And I do want to say, like, again, if you're listening and thinking this hasn't happened to me, it won't. We get many, many stories of people telling us, oh, my basement did flood 2 years after I bought my home or a few years later. And the worst stories are when it's happened twice to the same person. So if you can do this, and we have heard those stories, you're saving yourself $43,000.
Is there something we can do also like the rain garden, which I will explore because I've not heard of that. Is there something we can do about our driveways and these impermeable surfaces which don't allow water to go anywhere except, flood? That it just falls off the driveway and goes somewhere down the road into the sewer, I guess, or into our basements.
There is an option. It is costlier, but it's a wonderful option, and it's called depaving. So you can actually pay to have the pavement removed and have some sort of natural structure installed. So it can be like a piece of grass that just comes down the center of your driveway. You can leave space for your tires, trees around it. So it is a bigger piece of work, but it's absolutely worth doing. And it doesn't just help with flooding, but as we get into it later on, it helps with extreme heat. Like it cools down the area around your home. So if it is a possibility, that's an excellent one.
Interesting. So I remember at the farm, we never paved our driveway. We had a gravel driveway, which, was good on some days. In the winter was more of a hassle because plowing it was difficult. But actually it was probably a better surface to have to handle the rainwater. I also noticed that many farmhouses are built on hills and not in valleys. So the farmers, I guess, knew hundreds of years ago that building in a valley was not a good thing to do, that a hill was a better place.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And so much of this was intuitive for so many people, but as our population has grown and, certain laws change and we're allowed to build where we weren't allowed to build before, we're putting ourselves in danger and our homes in danger. So when I drive around certain neighborhoods and I see that they're well below like the line of the road, so they're in a valley, I worry about what could happen if there's an extreme event in that area, if there's extreme rainfall. Just the way that Southern Ontario is, every town has a river running through it. So there's just so much water here. We have these rivers that we live close to. We're starting to build in valleys. So we are increasing our risk along with climate change is increasing the risk itself. So yeah, we're not helping it too much.
Yeah, no, I think water, as much as, like I say, we love water and we need water and we must have water to live, water can become a danger to us. What about the damage to our possible or potential impact that water and flooding can have on our health?
Yes, so there was one very bad case. You might have heard of Walkerton in the year 2000. There was a really heavy rain event. It was like right after the agricultural fields had been sprayed with manure. And so after the heavy rain event, E. coli got into the water system, the drinking water system. And this is due to a few faults. So there were some infrastructure issues. The water wasn't tested properly. But this resulted in half of the town, 2,500 people getting sick, and 7 people unfortunately died at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very extreme and unfortunate, but it is something that can happen. So if there is runoff that gets into our drinking water system, then people could get very ill. It doesn't tend to happen so often, especially in bigger municipalities where, the water's being tested and the infrastructure's in place. But that is definitely a danger that we need to look out for.
We'll return to our interview right after these messages.
I'm also thinking not only of physical sicknesses, but also when you have a flood, the stress level in your life goes up. Your anxiety about your home continues to escalate because you don't know when the next thing is going to happen and you don't know what you can do about it. And again, I speak about seniors who are living alone and more vulnerable, and having to deal with that level of stress and anxiety is certainly not good for our health.
Absolutely. Actually, at the center, we conducted a survey about a flood that occurred in Burlington in 2014 to evaluate the stress that flooding can cause, the anxiety. And there are different reasons that people experience stress after a flood. One of them, financial costs, the loss of personal items, loss of time for work, having to temporarily leave your home. And the respondents that had experienced flood were more stressed and experienced higher anxiety than those that had never experienced the stress in relation to, can this occur to me again? So just living always a little bit anxious, like if it starts to rain quite a bit, you're going down to your basement, you're checking everything, making sure there are no leaks, versus somebody who has never suffered it. They don't know what that feels like, a little bit like PTSD. So absolutely a lot of anxiety around that.
So interesting. So interesting, because I'm reading a book on epigenetics right now. It's a topic of interest. And when they talk about, stress and anxiety, having major stress and anxiety, having an effect on your actual DNA, you start to think, oh my God, what can I do to protect myself? No matter where I look and what's happening, there's danger everywhere, sort of thing. But you've given us some really good ideas. But I'm thinking also about not just the personal homeowner or resident, but the municipality itself, the infrastructures that we rely on. We rely on our sewers to drain away water. We rely on hydro. We rely on supply chains to bring us our food. So in periods of extreme weather, specifically floods, what happens to all of those things? What can happen to us as a result of the infrastructure being damaged?
It absolutely is a concern at the municipal level, and it depends on the age of the infrastructure. And some of these sewer systems have been around for maybe 50 years, and they might not be able to support the rain that can come down now because they were built under a different kind of climate that didn't have what we have today. Again, this is unprecedented. So they might not be prepared for it. So there might be sewer issues. And that's why it's a good idea to make sure everything is okay and ready in your home. With the electrical grid, I think everybody has at some point have been left without electricity due to some sort of event. And with flooding, absolutely, it usually comes with wind. Some of the electrical infrastructure is knocked down. You're left without energy. So a backup generator is great to have in your home as well. So even if you have a pump, it won't stop working in this sort of extreme event. That's a trickier one because some of these issues might be municipal and there's a lot to look at the infrastructure to update it to today. So as I think I mentioned maybe in the past interview, some of these floods were 100-year floods. So they've prepared their infrastructure for a flood that occurs once every 100 years, but they are occurring more often now. So an overall upgrade might be needed for the municipality.
Yes, I'm thinking, yes. And I'm also thinking besides seniors, we have other vulnerable populations. Obviously, children are a vulnerable population, as are low-income residents, as well as people who have no income, so our homeless population. Those populations would really be without anything. They would have no recourse. Is that something that municipalities really have to think about, is what happens to the most vulnerable in their populations? And how can the municipality, and what does the municipality need to set up in order to deal with climate disasters. I'm going to call them disasters.
It's a big job for the municipality. And what I've been seeing, one of the main things that I've been seeing across municipalities in Canada is they're actually setting up full web pages just about this. So the municipality of Durham released an entire web page on just flooding, how they can prepare, what the municipality is doing, so you can find out what you can do for your home, what you can do in your community, and it's all spelled out there. And increasingly so, I'm seeing that they're doing this. So you can go on their web pages, check extreme heat, check flooding, and they'll give you tips on how to prepare. And for the most vulnerable populations, what I think municipalities should get ahead of the game is mapping them. So knowing where they are, and then having community programs where you can check in on those people. So it's pretty difficult with homelessness. You might not know where that person is when something's about to strike, but having an idea, having them a place that they can report to, give an update, some sort of way to reach them. And for the elderly in community, call in ahead of time. This is coming your way, get prepared, check in during a flood, call again, no answer, go check on them. So a lot of checking in systems and knowing where those people are located. It's a great way to prevent some of the bigger impacts from these disasters.
Yeah. Really such a huge topic, water, huge topic. I mean, not to mention what we also know about the pollution of our waterways and how that's affecting our drinking water and our physical health. But water, when it becomes an overwhelming crisis for us because of the volume of water, that's something we really haven't had to deal with. I was alive in Hurricane Hazel, which was in Ontario. I was actually at the airport flying to England, and I don't know how the pilot even took off. It was a horrific storm. So water, to me, water is one of the key abnormalities in terms of turning a good thing that we have to have into a bad thing that can affect us in very negative ways. I know that you talked about communities, and we will get into that in another session that we're going to run. But thank you so much for this little tour around water, which I think is one of the topics that we have to have much better information coming towards us. And I will look at Durham's site and mention it to our municipality as well. So Annabella, just before we leave this session today, I wonder if you could help us by telling people where to go to look for the information on your website, on the University of Waterloo's website, because I know that I have them now on my refrigerator door. So I think that it would be really valuable if you could help us by just telling us where we could go to find them.
Yes, our infographics are free to download and distribute across your community, anybody that needs them. So if you can go to intactcenter.ca, and that's Intact is INTACT, and center is CENTRE.ca. Under reports and resources, you will find all of our infographics. They're easy to follow, 3 steps, print it off and give it to everyone you know.
Thank you so much. I think that would be very helpful. Thank you so much for this, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Madeline.
Interviews in this series are conducted by Madeline Corelli, technical assistance by Trevor Joyce, production by Paige Johnston. Executive producer is Barry Walker. The preceding program has been a co-production of Northumberland 89.7 FM and the Community Training and Development Center.